The group is an excerpt taken from Yukio Mishima's book, Sun and Steel. Now, Yukio Mishima was a famous Japanese writer who famously also committed seppuku on himself. He grew up a sickly, lonely little child into an awkward, incel, poet and author young man. But as he grew older and matured into himself, he had come to see the beauty of masculinity and of collectiveness, the power of the group, not only in the result of the actions of a group, but the power in oneself in being part of that group. Mishima would go on to build his body up and create his own SS, the Shield Society, his own paramilitary group created around the same bond of freeing Japan from the ways of the modern cosmopolitan globalist mindset, mainly enforced by the Western powers. In the future in this channel, we'll go into a full life and times of Yukio Mishima. But there is also, link in the description, another video on his breakdown of the Hagakure. But for now, here is The Group by Yukio Mishima from Sun and Steel. The intuition of my infancy, the intuitive sense that the group represented the principle of the flesh, was correct. To this day, I have never once felt the need to amend it. But it was only in later years when I first came to know what I have called the dawn of the flesh, that rosy vertigo that descends on one after grueling use of the body and intense fatigue, that I began to perceive the significance of the group. The group was concerned with all those things that could never emerge from words: sweat and tears and cries of joy or pain. If one probed deeper still, it was concerned with the blood that words could never cause to flow. The reason perhaps why the testaments of the doomed are oddly remote from individual expression, impressing one rather with their stereotyped quality, is that they are the words of the flesh. At the moment when I first realized that the use of strength and the ensuing fatigue, the sweat, and the blood could ever reveal to my eyes that sacred, ever-swaying blue sky that the shrine bearers gazed on together, and could confer the glorious sense of being the same as others, I already had a foresight, perhaps, of that as a yet distant day when I should step beyond the realm of individuality, into which I had been driven by words, and awaken to the meaning of the group. There is, of course, such a thing as the language of the group, but it is in no sense a self-sufficient language. A speech, a slogan, the words of a play, all depend on the physical presence of the public speaker, the campaigner, the actor. Whether it is written down on paper or shouted aloud, the language of the group resolves itself ultimately into physical expression. It is not a language for transmitting private messages from one solitude of one closed room to the solitude of another distant closed room. The group is a concept of the uncommunicable shared suffering, a concept that ultimately rejects the agency of words. Only through the group, I realized, through sharing the suffering of the group, could the body reach that height of existence that the individual alone could never attain. And for the body to reach that level at which the divine might be glimpsed, a dissolution of the individuality was necessary. The tragic quality of the group was also necessary, the quality that constantly raised the group out of the abandon and torpor into which it was prone to lapse, leading it on to the ever-mounting shared suffering, and so to death, which was the ultimate suffering. The group must be open to death, which meant, of course, that it must be a community of warriors. In the dim light of early morning I was running, one of a group. A cotton towel with a symbol of a red sun on it was tied about my forehead, and I was stripped to the waist in the freezing air. Through the common suffering, the shared cries of encouragement, the shared pace, and the chorus of voices, I felt the slow emergence, like the sweat that gradually beaded on my skin, of that tragic quality that is the affirmation of identity. It was a flame of the flesh flickering up faintly beneath the biting breeze, a flame, one might almost say, of nobility. The sense of surrendering one's body to a cause gave new life to the muscles. We were united in seeking death and glory. It was not merely my personal quest. The pounding of the heart communicated itself to the group. We shared the same swift pulse. Self-awareness by now was as remote as the distant rumor of a town. I belonged to them. They belonged to me. The two formed an unmistakable us. To belong. What more intense form of existence could there be? Our small circle of oneness was a means to a vision of that vast, dimly gleaming circle of oneness. And all the while foreseeing that this imitation of tragedy was, in the same way as my own narrow happiness, condemned to vanish with the wind, to resolve itself into nothing more than muscles that simply existed. I had a vision where something that, if I were alone, would have resolved back into muscles and words, was held fast by the power of the group and led me away to a far land, whence there would be no return. It was perhaps the beginning of my placing reliance on others, a reliance that was mutual. And each of us, by committing himself to this immeasurable power, belonged to the whole. In this way, the group for me had come to represent a bridge that once crossed left no means of return.